Hata last time tulifanya ile bado kulikuwa na problem.
Tumeweka sana ama mumekuja tu sahi? We have a very short statement to make, and we have been here for the last 3 days.
We've had a section of politicians saying that
the executives are pushing that we have the luxury of size to do it.
Tu tuko na Wenga ni mwanachama, ni chairman wa chama. Tuko na Wangoi ni vice wa chama. Mr. Ruto ako kwa trustee ya chama, Bwana Ruto. Tuko na tuko na wengi, chairman wa chama Bwana Munyoroku, legal advisor wa chama ako. We have the following concerns and recommendations: that this document has not addressed agriculture, yet it is the lifeline of our economy. For this country to grow, we really need to address issues agriculture. A country that is food scarce cannot industrialize, and at the same time it is unhealthy. We therefore recommend a guaranteed maximum return framework where returns to our farmers is guaranteed, where the sweat of our farmers pay. Agriculture must start paying in Kenya. A sunset clause running for 10 years, allocating 10% of the country's budget to agriculture in compliance with the Malabo Declaration should therefore be included in the amendments to the Constitution. I want to emphasize once again that the economy of this country is driven by agriculture, that everything else is anchored on agriculture. You cannot talk of manufacturing in this country without addressing issues of agriculture. You cannot talk of housing in this country without addressing agriculture, because where will people generate money to buy the houses? You cannot talk of good health in this country without addressing issues agriculture, because health is more preventive than curative. You cannot talk of a good health nation when people are not properly fed. And therefore, the first step that we must take is to address issues agriculture. We are not asking too much. Already, we have the money locked. We are talking of enhancing the shareable resources from 15% to 35%, which is acceptable. But what we are saying is that even the county government must ensure that 10% of the devolved funds must go to agriculture. And this must be protected. Because again, our economy is based on agriculture and service. We welcome the increased allocation of devolved government, and there must be a robust national discussion on how these resources shall be generated. National discussions must shift from sharing national cake to generating it. Once again, everybody is talking on how we shall share this cake, but we are not asking ourselves simple questions. How do we generate this cake? How do we expand the cake? And that is why, once again, issues agriculture must take center stage. Because if you want to talk of generating income in this country, we have to address issues of agriculture. And there's two way about it. And people must also understand what agriculture means. Because sometimes when you talk of agriculture, people think it's about only coffee, tea, maize, potato. Agriculture encompasses all areas from livestock, fisheries, and all other aspects. And therefore, it is important that as we address national issues, addressing issues of how we share the cake, we must also have the other conversation. How do we expand this cake? We must now shift our discussion from consumption to production. We must be careful not to overburden wananchi with more taxes and overborrowing. We want to state that the document is a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag because it has been able to address issues that the two principals instructed the team to go and sit down together and come up with the solutions that are required by Kenyans. It is an attempted diagnosis of the Kenyan problem, including divisive and contested elections, exclusion in governance, the state of devolution, youth empowerment, gender parity, representation, and revenue sharing. We strongly oppose the ongoing mistaken notion that the BBI document is closed. It is not, and it cannot. The BBI document must be subjected to further national consensus building. There must now be a clear path of this national consensus building. These steps cannot be left to a few. It now belongs to all Kenyans. I want to repeat it again, that we strongly oppose the ongoing mistaken notion that the BBI document is closed. It is not, and it cannot. The BBI document must be subjected to further national consensus building. There must now be a clear path of this national consensus building. The next steps cannot be left to a few. It now belongs to all Kenyans. If we truly want to tell and convince Kenyans that we are building bridges, we must embrace wide-ranging consensus building. We cannot build bridges in an environment of blackmail and intimidation. Every voice matters. Finally, we must be very clear on accountability and prudence on the part of those entrusted with those resources. The proposal to use multiple member representation in order to enhance the equality of the vote is welcome. We expect it to address gender parity, increase resources to the beneficiary constituencies, and the inclusion of people with disability and special interest groups. The proposal on youth empowerment barely addresses the rampant unemployment problem. However, we welcome the tax holiday for the youth-owned enterprises as well as HELB moratorium. TSP is very clear that this requires neither a constitutional, I take it again, that TSP is very clear that this requires neither a constitutional amendment nor referendum. We therefore urge the President to instruct the Finance Cabinet Secretary to ensure this directive is implemented immediately, awaiting other amendments or as proposed in the BBI report. this will send a message to the country that the BBI partners are committed to addressing matters youth empowerment. I want to take that again because it's important for us to look at this document, dissect it, and to look at the intention. We must be very clear that we are not throwing in sweeteners. We are not only enticing Kenyans to vote for BBI, that we shall live to commitment, true commitment. Because if you tell us today that there are administrative issues to be addressed, and seriously, you can take that duty on your own. You don't require any other person. Then go ahead and do it. Because when we talk of payment, for example, of our suppliers and contractors, you only need to instruct the Treasury, the minister in charge, to draw guidelines if they are required, and also to implement immediately. And therefore, what we are requesting the President is now that he directs that in the next 30 days, this directive be implemented. So that as we continue with this conversation, the young men in this country will be very happy. Number two, that it is not only about the moratorium. It is not only tax relief. What we are asking ourselves, are these young people able to set up the businesses? Can they set up business? The question must be answered. Because if we still continue with all the licenses that are required, how many young men will be able to raise enough capital to start the business setups and at the same time to be able to pay the taxes? The taxes that are required, the licenses, I mean licenses, the licenses that are required for you to start business in this country are so prohibitive to an extent that young people cannot afford. The money they are required to pay by the national government and the county government on licenses, one license alone, if they are not paying only one license in this country, they can be able to start their business so easily. We are talking of young men whom with only 5,000 they can start a business. But before they set up business for 5,000, they are required to pay 30,000 for licenses alone. So that's a question that we must address. Is it only about tax relief, or it is enabling them to start a business? Timely payment of contractors and suppliers require administrative action, not a referendum. Government should start implementing today. Why should it be delayed? Again, the same question. TSP position on judiciary, police, and IEBC is that they should be independent and have zero political interference. The current BBI proposals on these organs fundamentally compromises their independence and introduce executive and political interference. We demand that this be reworked and streamlined to guarantee independence. In conclusion, in view of the foregoing gaps and concerns, the BBI report, as it stands today, calls for further consensus building to avoid division and achieve an uncontested passage of the amendments. Only then can we talk of building bridges. TSP has generated comprehensive review and shall present our recommendations when the next steps are defined. I thank you. Pray that this cannot be. You cannot close this document. If you close the document and you are talking of consensus, you are talking of dialogue, which platform do you offer Kenyans? You cannot say that you have looked at it all aloud and no other Kenyans can have a say. Because what we are saying, yes, we are supporting this document. To this far, 80% of it is okay, but there are issues that we need clarity. And that is why you cannot say that we cannot open. Are you saying that you cannot even have room for people to ask you to clarify those issues, for other Kenyans to interrogate this document and ask for at least the interpretation of subsections here and there? What do they mean? So when you say that this document is closed, what you are calling for is division. And one of the fundamental principles of BBI is inclusion, that you don't want to have contested elections. But when today you want to declare it is us versus them, that those who want this discussion opened again are opposed, because you are raring to have a fight. And you have seen it happen, that you have started criticizing each other. Yeah? Kuna watu tu wameanza madharau, kuchokoza wengine, ili kuwe hii katiba itakuwa na wale wanaunga na wale ambaye hawaungi mkono. You can see that happening. It's just the way you are young boys. You look at young boys who want to fight. Moja anachokoza mwingine tu, anaendelea kumsukuma, na huyu hataki vita, lakini atasukuma mpaka akasirike na vita itaanza. That is exactly what our leaders are doing. Yes, they can rush it because you never know of the objective. Those who initiated it might have had their own objective, their own reason why they want to push a referendum now. But what we are telling them, okay, if you look at this report, we have a section on policy, simple administrative issues, we have issues program, and we have issues that are constitutional, that requires a constitutional amendment. All what you are asking them, okay, you can push things, you can rush us to a referendum. But before you do that, please fulfill some of these promises that do not require a referendum. Those administrative issues, why don't you fulfill them to show us goodwill? That's all what you're asking them. We have no problem, create seats, and by the end of the day, we still have Prime Minister in Kenya. Why should we be worried another one is coming? Still there. We are not objecting. We have said it's okay. At the end of the day, the referendum will come and go, and we shall be left with one document called the Constitution of Republic of Kenya. And whoever will come to be the president of this country will use that document. So it doesn't matter. What matters is who will be implementing this document. Today, we have the constitution that we have today. Yeah? It has given us a lot of safeguards. Has it not been misused? Are we not being harassed today? Are we still not having people who are not paid the suppliers who have not been paid for the last 3 years? So it is not about the constitution. It is about who is going to implement that constitution. It is about goodwill, my friend. Not setting systems that are doomed to fail. You already set systems that you are going to pay youths, and you know the system will fail. Anyway, wacha tuweze. Turauga umuthi twihaha ituratunganite ta kiama gia TSP atongoria kuma miena na miena ya bururi tukiarĩrĩria uhoro wa BBI. Na no wega ndoitu mamenye ati BBI ti katiba. BBI ni riboti irehetwo niguo Kenya majie kwa miarĩrĩria mamethuthuria wega muno makiria niguo mahote gukurana gatagati-ini kayo ngano na thawani iria makuria na iria iguteo. Na gatagati-ini kau no nginya tungiramirorire na ndurumeni tumikire maitho ma ngoro niguo tumenye wega kiria inakio ta andu aria tumite Mount Kenya. Tondu wa mbere ni twagiriirwo kumenya atiriri BBI no twareherwo ri ni kanyoni muthembao igututeithia na njira iriku tutikaia gukorwo turonererio ati haha hena nyama no nyama eno rio rigaya tondu ungithie mugaire-ini wa indo ni turona wega muno makiria ni rauga uhoro wa iti ikuongerereka na hari iti ici 70 irongerereka ri no nginya tuyurie ta nyumba atiriri iti ici ni gutiganania uria kwagirire. Hindi ria twathire kuria Embu ta MP a Mount Kenya atongoria Mount Kenya twambire rukiuria atiriri BBI ino irarehwo ri niki gitu gigatagati-ini kayo tondu rukianjia kwaria wa muhiriga no nginya twambe twaria wa nyumba already mwirite maita maiki twambe turore ibuku riri ria BBI tuyuria atiriri ite ici 70 ri no ikorwo no kunoria iranoria no cienene ite ici 70 ri ni igotigirira ati kwa ruturaga tuhinyiriirio ati ni ithu twina kura iria nyingi muno makiria na twina njumbi iria nini muno makiria bunge ni twahonia kare kirema kiu tondu ite ici 70 no nginya ara marathi na ibaca matutaririe wega na nie no nginya tucirorega muno makiria ati ite ici 70 no nginya tunengerwo ite 40 guthi na iguru tondu tikuga ati ite 70 ni ciareho ni cia bururi mugima ite ici 70 ciambe irore ara maturaga mahinyiriirio na riu turathi guthura prime minister thini wa bunge andu no nginya mamenye prime minister arithuragwo ni abunge ona korwo president mucagure orota bunge no eriugaga no gutuika prime minister na hau neho ndeto ire riu ati tungikota na njumbi akuigana turikorwo ni ithu ingi muno makiria mundu etagwo Ruko urugamite haha kuma kuria Mbere North atuika nayo watuika prime minister ari angi othe maregane nake na ni president ni aritwo arehe prime minister wa mbere wona aregwo ni njumbe ucio ni aregwo arehe wa keri ni aregwo koguo no agie mundu ri tukungagia ugi akauga ni anengera Ruko gutuika niwe prime minister agacoka gatuma na thutha akera Karungo wa Thagona wa Ngui matigaikie kura koguo akamwira ni ndiramuheire no ni andu marekirie atia ni bunge iramuregire tutikana kungwo wala ringi no nginya tutigirire andu aya 70 ni aitu kuma Mount Kenya region na une koiganania na atire kindu kia mundu turetia tondu iyo niyo haki itu uria yagirire akorwo ni ugai wa mbeca ni turauga ni wega muno makiria na ndathoma ni ndonire gaciba ukarauga atiriri hatiri mundu wa Kenya wayo ni ukorwo akiheo mbeca maita mathatu nyingi gukira ari angi gaciba ukau ni kega muno na ithwe tandu wa Mount Kenya no nginya tuyuria atiriri niki kana niki ni gagucoka kawagarurwo okuria mehingirite thiini ri kawehutio niguo akorwo mbeca ni iraigananio ri mundu uri kuria Garissa akiheo 21,000 mundu wa Mount Kenya onaga mbeca nyingi akinyirio ciringi 10,000 na niguo tuhote kumenya atiriri mbeca ici kuma nako tutigacoke no gutuika no kwirirwo turerirwo na ni indo ciene na ni muinyuragia mwena uriku koguo turenda kuga gaciba ukau ni kega na ithwe no nginya tutigire ni kaingira thiini wa gatiba niguo indo igayo na tucoke tuyuria atiriri andu aya 70 turongererwo aheshimiwa ri ni maroka na mbeca tondu atire bata tunio aheshimiwa 40 kana 70 thiini wa bururi na ajumbi acio maroka mahana airitu ara makoragwo haria wiki-ini metagwo flower girls acha akorwo ajumbi ni marongererwo mongererwo na mbeca moke na kiondo tondu kiondo nikio tubataire muno makiria icio nicio turenda mbeca igoka mwena witu na ni ciguteithia andu aitu uria magirire ko turauga kuga akorwo ni ko view gatigativa ni kuga mbeca irigayagwo na ni gukorwo na muiganania ni tugwitikira guthi na mbere na guikiria gativa eno kura uria yagirire na maundu ma ngirigaca andu a Kenya urimi niguo kindu kia mbere na mundu wothe uri kuria aikaire ni oyo wega ati aturagio ni ng'ombe yake aturagio ni kahua gake aturagio ni machani make aturagio ni mucere wake ithwe turi arimi na koguo ko nduratuhenia na wenda gututeithia muno makiria ri ona mbere otuongereire iti mbere othite kugaya mbeca cia bururi tondu guti mundu utakugairwo wambe otwire mbeca iria uratwikirira cia ngirigaca niguo tukorwo tukimenya kuma umuthi atiriri machani maitu matikagwa bei ringi maumage kuma ciringi 350 maoka 165 kahua gaitu tundu turiguragirwo bei iriku tutigirire gutire hindi iria ringi rikagwa thi wa ciringi 35 ikoragwo atirire iria rigwete muno ni 35 mucere witu kiro tumenyo riguragwo atia icio ni cigutuma mundu witu o haria hothe ari akorwo na hinya no rugare na tukengetagira twakengetaga no ikorwo ngirigaca ni yakuire thiini wa bururi hatire tugathie na mbere ona hanini tuguthie na mbere na kuria magoti tondu na keki no muraigwa ni yararamio ati mbeca nyingi ni kunengerwo county ri ni amari kamagwo iria riri ria kunyuo ni muiki na nikio ndi mwera kaingi tugitire mikamo na kanua haria kari ka ng'ombe niguo korwo ni turathie na mbere na kuthi kugaya mbeca cia bururi twambe tumenye turaruta mbeca icio ku na kuria mbeca ingiuma ni ngirigaca-ini na ngirigaca niwe tuturagia nikio turauga gicibao gia 10 kigina gia 10 hari budget ya Kenya mbeca ciothe ciukanagio bururi kigina gia 10 kinengerwo ngirigaca niguo tukorwo twiyatire wega biu makiria ni tuwikira mbeca mihuko niguo tumenya muno makiria anake itu matigukorwo magithie matauni gwetha mawira to no mahote guthukuma kuma kwao mici na koguo nitukunyitira muno makiria niguo mbegu njithi nayo ri ihote kuingira urimi-ini mbegu njithi ri ihote kuruta biashara gicibao kiria kirekirirwo gia kuga mbegu njithi ni ikaraga miaka 7 tari igoti ri ni kiaga muno makiria no ningi turoria atiriri uraga kumarihia biashara iri kumena cio tondu mundu mwethi agithi kuhingura biashara ri biashara ira arathi kuhingura na 10,000 ri aretio license cia ciringi 20,000 kwa kindu kia betrodia thirikari ni atiriri akorwo wina mabio urenda guteithia mbegu njithi ri ehutie magoti uge mbegu njithi no ambe amehutiria magoti miaka yo 7 na matikare he interest miaka 7 yathira ri cokia mbegu cia igoti tondu biashara ni gukorwo irugamitie no riu ni kunengera mundu na guoko kworeo ukamutunya na guoko kwa motho ukamera na mateithia muno biashara-ini ciao no ungehota kuona beca kuhingura biashara anake araitu moruragia indo cia karagaca town anake araitu marihuka ni acio makorwo na indo cia karagaca makorwo na indo cia 2,000 3,000 kwa kira maoria muno makiria ri reke ithuĩ twina ngiri citu 5 ri tuhingure biashara citu na ndugatugie uguo niguo turauga niguo nayo mbeu njithi ikorwo na miri niguo nyite wega muti uturagio ni muhandi na mai ugaitiririo mai niguo gakuhe kiruru bicio na moigo cia kuigana.